Welcome to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharan
Our podcast is called Conversations on the Business of Brands.
Correct.
And we do not necessarily prescribe to growth hacking and stuff. And
Yeah.
you are getting better and better with your clickbaiting. And you are about to tell people how to game the stage for marketing. What's the topic?
Let me clarify this again, Sharan. This is not meant to teach any clickbaity or growth hacking tactics to anybody. I'm just trying to delve into this aspect that I've observed with many brands where they've been able to get to a stage from where they can start marketing their proposition to wide world, right?
Okay,
We've spoken about this in the past where we say that one of the key tests for a startup is when they are able to prove their PMF, product market fit,
absolutely.
right? The last entire episode was about PMF and how do you go about it. Now once you've proven your PMF, you're clear. Now you want to take this to whole lot of consumers out there.
Hmm.
And as we said, that by the time you're proving your PMF, you're still in your branding stage. After that you go on to your marketing stage, right?
Got it.
So therefore today's conversation is all about saying how do you get to that stage beyond obviously working on PMF, etc., so that your marketing becomes significantly effective. How do you
Hmm.
get to that stage?
Interesting. I mean, I like how you linking it to the previous episode on PMF. But
Hmm.
I think a critical factor here is that after PMF is when marketing's job actually begins,
Yeah.
right? Because you know what your brand's core is. It's not
Yeah.
branding. We always said the brand building happens even before the idea does. Marketing's job actually takes over when the PMF is done. Perfect.
Correct.
And this is scaling up your product after you've proven its concept.
Yeah, in fact, before you scale up the product, you have to expose your proposition to large masses.
Absolutely.
Only then they either become receptive or demanding of your product or your service.
Right.
Now, how do you get onto a pedestal where you can either demand or command the attention of majority of your customers who possibly should resonate with your PMF, is where this stage comes into play.
So at this stage, you mean maximizing reach. You're driving up awareness and interest among consumers, your prospective consumers, and maximizing reach. And
Correct.
this aspect is what is widely assumed to be
Huh.
very expensive
Huh.
and not to be done by every brand. Is that true?
See, every brand will harbor ambitions to become big,
Mm-hmm.
and hence one day or the other they would have to get into this fray. Now, however, the fact that it is supposed to be expensive is only a myth, right? And that is where gaming the stage comes into play. Now, when I was thinking about this topic, I thought about various brands that have been successful
Hmm.
in creating this stage where once they've reached a certain critical mass, they've been able to use the stage to continuously engage with their consumers and deliver fresh renditions of their propositions that got tested during the PMF phase.
Hmm.
And they
Right.
satisfied the condition you laid out in the last episode, Sharan, of being repeatable, of being cost efficient so that it is profitable, etc.
Absolutely. And being consistent with what you're doing, right? That's why you're
Correct.
saying the same message, but different renditions to keep the interest in.
Yeah, to keep the freshness alive, to make sure that the consumer sees you moving with the times and you remain relevant. Yeah. Now, in various episodes in the past, you've referred to this long queue,
Hmm.
Sharon,
Yes.
of saying that now that you've got a localized success, now getting to that larger platform requires, going through this long queue.
Right.
Now, long queue could be about winning in smaller cohorts, marketing to them, winning, and then making into a larger cohort. But I want to share examples of a few brands in Indian context
Hmm.
who I think have been able to game the stage and thereby create a platform for themselves so that they were able to possibly leapfrog this long queue by a certain amount of time.
Perfect. Perfectly put. In fact, the whole concept of the long chew is that it's neither supposed to be long or chewy. It ends up becoming the long chew because businesses get into a vicious cycle
Hmm.
of buying sales.
Hmm.
So if take FMCG, which is my domain, to say you give extra credit to the distributor, you give
Distributors,
more
yeah.
margin to the retailer, and
Hmm.
you subsidize your end consumer with promotions.
Hmm.
And you have never enough money left in the system. You're running a cash crunch all the time, and that is the long chew because you have nowhere to go. You're almost stuck in limbo. And the whole idea of terming it the long chew is that you must leapfrog that phase and get into a brand acceleration, transform your sales push into a brand pull. And
Hmm.
I'm glad you do calling it that way exactly to say you're gaming the system to create pull for your brand.
Yeah, I think the other thing I took out from your description of long chew was also about the fact that whatever you do now, you're not doing it for the short term.
Right.
So you're not really, buying sales. So therefore, one has to be patient, right?
Yes.
And so therefore, possibly the long of the long chew
Hmm.
denotes that, once you start on this journey, you would have to be patient.
Yes.
Yeah, because you're in it for the long run.
I get that, Sudeep, that
Hmm.
you are telling people that they can actually leapfrog, which I agree with.
Hmm.
But I'd like you to go deeper. I'm sure you
Hmm.
will, to say
Hmm.
how they can leapfrog because you already said that it costs money is a myth.
Hmm.
So I'm
Hmm.
curious now.
Yeah, I think there are many ways of getting there.
Mhm.
And I am not a theorist, but I'll just opine from whatever I've seen from practical examples. So there are three ways that I could think of.
Okay.
Right? There could be many, and I would invite the listeners to possibly listen to these three and then point out if they can find another couple of ways. So
Sure.
first one is riding the wave. I also read this somewhere that brands that really become big are the ones who remain invested in a particular channel or a particular trend, and then they get their moment under the sun when the wave comes by, right? I would like everybody to understand this example by considering the case of Paytm.
Okay.
Yeah, during demonetization, when
Mhm.
overnight cash currency completely vanished or was debarred, then one brand that was already well placed to take advantage of the situation, and the brand that actually took the plunge to advertise the same day in major newspapers of the country,
Right.
was Paytm.
Right.
Now, Paytm's right to win might not have been differentiated from many of its competitors, but it was able to very well leverage the wave that came by and completely separated itself from the pack. And once they got that platform, then I think they really kind of cemented their position by getting into campaigns like Paytm Karo. Another brilliant innovation that came from them was that speaker box that they placed
Hmm.
at various
Right.
shops, because they did not require the obviates the need to check the balance in the phone, etc., etc. So I think they did a pretty good job
I
of
agree with you.
leapfrogging.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they definitely leapfrog. But before I ask my question, I'm going to ask you for another example other than Paytm. I'll tell
Yeah,
you
there
why.
are many. Okay, there are many actually. So I was wondering about some of the things that have changed recently, and one of my observations was that post COVID, we have seen this rise of insta influencers or
Mhm.
content which comes out of from various OTT channels. Stand ups became very popular. Some of the characters of the stand up became very popular.
Right.
One interesting example, so people like Samay Raina, Kusha Kapila,
Hmm.
these are all guys who became big during COVID.
Right.
Yeah. In fact, in one of the recent interviews, I saw this somewhere. Somebody was asking Samay, how was COVID for you? He said कि भाई कोविड तो बहुत अच्छा था, मेरा तो मतलब लाइफ बन गई. So he was otherwise a chess player. The world discovered his comic timing, and and the rest is history. He's doing fairly well for himself.
Got it.
So
Okay.
I think that's another thing about riding the wave.
I get what he's saying. See,
Yeah,
I get that both demonetization and COVID have kind of helped a few brands to
yeah,
leapfrog the long chew stage and go into acceleration phase. But these are black swan events, right? You can't necessarily strategize for it because
Mhm.
you could be Paytm could have been waiting for it. Paytm had no idea demonetization was coming.
Correct.
So that's not something you can plan for, right?
You can't. And I quote this often when people speak to me. This phenomena of, uh, you know, a phenomena given by Naval Ravikant,
Hmm.
yeah, about increasing your luck surface area. Yeah, he talks about the fact that obviously you can't plan to get lucky. You don't know when you will get lucky, but how do you increase your luck surface area such that luck, like lightning, when it strikes, there is higher probability of it striking your way, right? So
Fair.
now I call this, all these brands or comics and everybody else, they increase their luck surface area by specializing in a particular business or an art form, etc., and then repeatedly trying, right? And once you try for a period of time, there are bound to be swan events that will come your way.
Hmm.
Now, only when you're ready will you be able to leverage them.
Understood. And I should have half expected this answer from you anyway. So I'll change my question now to say, let's say I'm not lucky. A black
Hmm.
swan event hasn't happened in my industry,
Hmm.
and I don't know if it's going to happen. What is my chance then?
You have to believe. You have to believe
Okay.
that something of this kind will come your way,
Hmm.
especially in India, where almost every sector has such significant penetration opportunities, premiumization opportunities, that there are bound to be opportunities, significant ones, disproportionate opportunities that are bound to come to everybody. The question
Got it.
is whether you are readily placed and whether you have built sufficient arsenal to take advantage of it. So therefore you have to be ready and
Hmm.
have the belief that you will have something.
Hmm.
Now there are also examples where people didn't have the patience or had the gumption to go the other way.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so first one was riding the wave, the
Hmm.
second one is creating the wave.
Okay.
Now people have, now this is where man slash woman decides to take matter into their own hands and say that let me try to create a wave so that I can give myself the platform to shine,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
Yeah. Now
Isn't that
this,
the expensive way to do it? To creating your own black swan event?
again, the same thing, I think. Not necessarily.
Okay.
A good example of this, somebody who has done this over and over again, is Red Bull.
Okay.
Yeah, so while Red Bull has this regular campaign where they show small situations where Red Bull gives you wings,
Hmm.
what it actually does, it creates those extreme sports events,
Hmm.
which are fantastical, which are sort of out of this world, and that have nothing to do with consumption of Red Bull, but
Hmm.
everything to do with association. And these are all PR worthy events.
Correct.
I
Hmm.
attended one of them in Mumbai called Subbox,
Mm-hmm.
where they invite people to make cars or vehicles or four wheelers
Okay.
out of anything that they can lay their hands on. And teams participate, and all they have to do is they have to push it down the slope. They hold it in Bandra here in Mumbai. They have to
Okay.
push it down the slope, and it has to reach the end on all its wheels. Everything else can break apart. It was a fun event. Lots of people came in. There were now, the success of an event is when other people want to ride the popularity of it. And I could see one or two film promotions of Imran Khan
Hmm.
happening there. So therefore somebody in PR thought that this was a worthy event to do the promotions
Right.
there.
Right.
Now I will credit Red Bull because they keep doing this over and over again.
Right.
It's quite an amazing capability.
True. I get it. So it becomes a form of earned media also, right? So that
Yeah, yeah,
wave,
of course.
when other
Of
other
course.
brands ride on the wave that you're creating, it becomes they are still working for you.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, another one that I remember from my very early days in marketing, something that really left an impression on me, was the talking newspaper by Volkswagen.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah, they had put up a small speaker of sorts in the under the first page of Times of India. So when you
Oh,
open the first page, that speaker starts speaking. and it gives this entire pitch of Volkswagen. This is the first time somebody had really leveraged newspaper with this kind. I'm sure they
With
spent
audio, right? Yeah.
audio. They spent huge amount
Right.
of money, but it was something which, that created a significant wave. It
Hmm.
gave them the platform, and they used it to say whatever they wanted to. I think Volkswagen launched uh, with that device in India.
Right.
Yeah, or they launched Polo. I don't remember.
Okay.
A big budget launch for them. And there have been numerous examples like that.
Okay. So this reminds me, Sudeep, when you say creating the wave, you're creating the buzz in the market for people to talk about what you want them to talk about. A lot of brands have tried this recently by creating some artificial controversies. If you remember Anushka Sharma and Puma getting into a social media spat before announcing that she's also a brand ambassador. There was also this Poonam Pandey cervical cancer awareness by declaring she was dead. What's your take on that? Is that okay? Is that also creating a wave?
They are trying to. The fact that they did not succeed is tells you that possibly the attempt wasn't good enough. So therefore, I would say that, for example, Volkswagen or Red Bull, they had their own way of approaching it. Now,
Hmm.
Volkswagen's way of doing this was only a media innovation. Red Bull does this very consistently because it is consistent with their brand positioning.
Right.
So I think when you keep some of these things in mind and you do it within the ambit of legality, ethicality, and morality, I
Hmm.
think you have more chances to succeed and to really leave a positive impression on the people who are exposed to this.
Got it. Okay. What's the next one?
Yeah. Okay. Now we spoke about riding the wave, creating the wave. The third and the more obvious one that you obviously asked earlier, the expensive way, which is buying the wave, buying into the wave.
Throwing money at the wave.
Throwing money at the wave. Now that it's a legible option, there's nothing wrong about it. I definitely don't scoff at it. Look at the IPL sponsorship that goes every year, and that is clearly a brand's attempt to throw money at it. I remember Geo,
Hmm.
the Geo Dhandanadan campaign,
Right.
possibly one of the worst campaigns ever to have debuted on IPL,
IPL.
and with that frequency, and all you could remember was cricketers dancing atrociously on this song called Geo Dandanadan, right? And left, right, and center, this was coming through. But Geo created a flutter with
Hmm.
all of that. I
It did.
think prior to that, only Kingfisher was able to do that with all the cricketers across teams,
Hmm.
etc., etc. Geo really broke the bank with that.
So
Similarly,
there,
Tata knew.
yeah, there are these high impact properties with a lot of expense, right? So is there a way brands can ride a wave without spending too much money? Is there a way they can contribute to a wave?
Possibly they can. Possibly they can.
Okay.
But again, it's fairly, one has to be really smart about it, or it'll go into the riding the wave
Hmm.
category.
Got it.
Right
Okay.
now, Five Star tried once
Hmm.
to ride on the cryptocurrency wave
Okay.
by launching the Nothing coin.
Yes, I remember that.
Right, so now it's a smart way of connecting with a target segment that is interested in crypto
Hmm.
and delivering your proposition, etc. So brands can do that. There can
Right.
be smart ways of doing so, but again, they spent money, they advertised on top of it,
Hmm.
etc., etc. You can buy into waves,
Okay.
and depending on how big you want to go, you can decide your budget and buy into that size of a wave.
Hmm.
Right,
Okay.
another one that I can think of, which is a slightly more inexpensive way but
Hmm.
high effort one,
Hmm.
is when I see brands on Shark Tank.
That's a beautiful example, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, so now, and I see a number of times the judges on the Shark Tank or the sharks telling the startups that you're not here to raise money, right? That sort of deal that you're offering, you'll not get any deal. You're here to get marketing.
And that's okay.
That's okay. I think so. Yeah,
Right. So you're saying so explained three, right? You are
yeah.
saying you're talking
Riding
about
the
riding the wave,
riding the wave. Yeah,
creating the wave,
yeah.
and buying into the wave.
Correct.
And you're saying there's nothing unethical about any of this.
Yeah, I think there's nothing ethical or any unethical about it. right?
Okay.
It is always good to try. And I think these are all legible ways to get to that juncture.
Hmm.
And honestly, my experience has been that beyond a point, consumers forget how you reach that juncture.
True.
Yeah. So there is no right or wrong way of getting to this platform.
Hmm.
Then what do you do with it?
Hmm.
I think it becomes very critical. And hence I keep saying that for all the examples that we spoke about, Sharan, like Startup Universe, there are hundreds others that did not succeed and
Exactly.
tried the same thing. So therefore, these actions are performed by professionals. Do try them at home or in your company at your own risk.
Okay. The disclaimers is loud and clear. But what should marketers take away from this conversation today?
I think fairly simple one, consistent with what we have said in the past. If you're a marketer or a brand starting out, the first thing obviously is to create a conviction in your PMF, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Then is when you can think about gaming the stage as to how do you give yourself the platform to now unleash your proposition such that your brand can instantly ride on that stage and possibly get to the heights that it deserves. So I think that's what my advice to marketers would be. While there are ways to game the stage, but it comes later in the entire journey, and hence the first few blocks have to be really fundamentally strong for you to be able to leverage this and get to where you really want to take your brand.
Perfect. Simply put, listen to the previous episode and then this episode. Don't start here.
Correct. Correct. Well put.
Perfect.
Well put.
Thank you for listening to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharavana Raghavan. Subscribe and learn more at cobcast.net.